Okay, good morning, class. It's 2 a.m. now, and we're going to discuss about lesson 7, which is sin. Maybe not not a subject that you particularly want to discuss, but something that we particularly want to do oftentimes. But what is sin? Let's look at it. We are in a class. This would be our activity, but since there we are separated individually. So you might just want to think at the moment about this question and go along with the discussion. What is the greatest sin you have done in your life that you still regret even until now? It's good that you're going to share it with the class, have this in your mind. What sin have I really done in my life that up until now I still regret? Because some of us would normally or would usually give some alibis why we did certain things in our life that society, especially now, society would always tell us that, well, you've done those things. Why? Because you were compelled to do it. Given the circumstances, you have no choice but to do it. This is what society is telling us right now. You just be true to yourself. Do whatever you want to do. It's your body, it's your right. Don't let anybody dictate what they want you to do. You don't allow society or the church tells you what's right or wrong. Just do it. Whatever will make you happy, just do it. That's how society works right now. So there is really a little sense of sin. That's a problem with our society now. Uh, actually, Pope Francis and even the previous popes before him would always say that the greatest tragedy now is that we have lost the sense of sin. Why? Because psychology can explain everything. Later on, we will discuss what I mean by that. After the Second Vatican Council, I kept on telling you about the Second Vatican Council. Anyway, you already know the background of the Second Vatican Council in your Theology 3. There was a great renewal, not only in terms of how we pray in the liturgy, but also in our theology in the different our moral theology, how we looked and judged moral actions. And part of this great renewal brought about by the Second Vatican Council is a new perspective in terms of how we look at sin. And we go back to our sources. And our primary source will always be the scriptures, the Bible. That's one of the greatest treasures that we have. Of course, tradition is another, but biblical perspective is introduced by the Second Vatican Council. It's a renewal of our understanding of what sin is. As I have mentioned in our previous classes, moral theologians before the Second Vatican Council, we just used the Bible just to support what they're already claiming. They have already explained why such an action is morally acceptable or unacceptable, and then they will just add something from the Bible in order to just to supplement it, just to make it more lucrative or beautiful, just to enhance it. But it's not always the core of deciding why it is morally acceptable or unacceptable. So the renewal of moral theology and its return to its scriptural roots have facilitated a retrieval of a biblical sense of sin. What do we mean by retrieval? We were able to get back how sin is looked upon in the Bible, especially during the time of Jesus. How did he saw or how did he judge what sin is, what constitutes sin? And there are two important biblical metaphors that we can find in the Bible with regards to sin. When we say metaphor, it's you're using something in order to describe something. Okay, you use a metaphor to describe a far more deeper meaning of the subject what you are talking about. And these two biblical metaphors are the covenant and the heart. Let's look at first the covenant. Covenant is something similar with a vow. Others would say it's a contract, but contract is the difference between a covenant and a contract. When you enter into a contract and one of the parties um, did not um, submit or were not able to comply with what you have agreed upon, then the contract can be broken. It, it means that the other party, for example, there are two parties who entered into this contract. Uh, Party number one, we're not able to we're not able to do what has been agreed upon. That will lose the bond or the binding force of the contract. It means party number two is now freed from any decisions or anything that they have agreed upon because the other party has already what do we call this have already breached upon what has been agreed upon, so it frees him so he can also now dishonor what has been agreed upon. On the other hand, a covenant is different. A covenant is like this: even if the other party is not doing his part of what has been agreed upon, he still continues to be loyal to what they have agreed. That's a covenant. And like the covenant between God and us, even if we are unfaithful to that relationship that we have with God, God will always remain faithful to his promise. No matter how many times we disregard the agreement, God will always be faithful to that agreement. So covenant expresses our personal relationship with God. Okay? When we say covenant, it talks about that relationship, the bond that we have with God. The primary claim of this covenant is that God loves us without our having to earn God's love. Okay? It is called grace, unmerited grace, meaning undeserved love. Even if we do not deserve it, God loves us. That is the premise of this covenant. No matter how unworthy we are, no matter how sinful we are, no matter how unlovable we are, God still loves us. That is the premise of this covenant. God's love is a bond of completely gratuitous love. When we say gratuitous, it is a love given to somebody that doesn't deserve it. It is purely undeserved grace. We did not do anything in order to receive it. Okay? It is not based on the merits of what we have done for God in order for Him to love us. So even if you are the most sinful person in the world, God grants you that grace. Okay? It is something that nobody can brag about, that God loves him more than other people because of his actions. No, that is this is what the covenant is telling us. Sin, understood within the context of covenant relationship, is not simply about breaking moral rules. It is breaking our personal bond with God. Okay? Many of us, as I was reading your previous reflection papers, would always, well, that's understandable, would always say that, you know, the church always imposes rules, the do's and don'ts. Um, and that would give us a mentality that sinning is about breaking rules. But it's far more deeper than that. It's not really about breaking rules, but it's breaking the relationship. Okay? You go back to the context of, like, for example, a parent and a child. Parents would usually set some rules, but it's not, they're setting rules not because they just wanted to have rules, but because they know that these rules will protect the child. Uh, they give rules in order for the child not to be harmed. Okay? Because a child is his or her knowledge is limited, the things of how the world works, and parents would usually set some limits in order to protect the child from future harm that the child cannot foresee. Okay? So if you look at it that way, God has given us some parameters because He doesn't want us to get harmed. He doesn't want us to get harmed. And if we look at it that way, sin is not breaking the rules, but breaking that relationship with God, breaking that relationship, not trusting Him, that He knows better than us. The covenant context lifts the idea of sin from a legalistic framework and puts it in a context of a relational setting. Let's go back to your relationship with your family, with your parents. Are you afraid of breaking the rules just because you will be punished or because you know that your parents will be hurt? Try to reflect on that. When you did something wrong, when you know that you have done something wrong to your parents, do you feel remorseful because you know that you will be punished? Or are you remorseful because you know that you have hurt them? It's the same with our relationship with God. It's the same with our relationship with God. We do not, we avoid sin because we do not want to hurt Him. Okay? We do not want to offend Him. We do not want the person that we love to be hurt. And in order for us to protect that the other person will not be hurt, is not to do things that you know that would offend Him or things that you know that He doesn't want you to do. Okay, so it is in a relationship context. In our understanding of what sin is, we need to understand. You are already mature people. No? You're above 18. If you still see sin as just merely breaking the rules, then you are not growing in your relationship with God, in your faith. So we look at it in a covenant metaphor. Our response to God's love can be expressed in threefold manner. First is to respect the worth of ourselves and others as constituted by God's love. Do you know your worth? Before you learn or before you appreciate or respect the worth of other people, you need to know your self worth first. Because if we are all the same and you treat yourself as a trash, then most likely that's how you're going to treat other people as well. Okay? If you are hard on yourself, no, if you keep on beating yourself, if you keep on telling yourself that you're not good enough, most likely, most probably, that would also be your attitude toward others. Sin, remember, sin that violates the worth of persons are attitudes and actions that create and maintain false idols. If you do not know your real worth, you're going to create an imaginary self. Okay? If you do not know who you are, then you will going to imagine something else. You are someone else. That is not truly you. Let me just bring in the context of humility. You know, for Santa Teresa of Avila, humility is walking in truth. Maybe that's the difference with the Benedictine understanding, the Beden understanding of what humility is. Humility is somehow other people would always describe it as putting yourself down, no? Lower than others. But for Santa Teresa, humility is walking in truth, meaning you know who you are and you stay true to that. You don't put yourself lower. if you are not lower. That is false humility for her. Like for example, if you're a teacher and you know and you are knowledgeable of something, you will not pretend that you do not know it. If you know it, that's false humility. If you are a good student and because you think that you will be boastful if you try to recite in a recitation, people will say, ang yabang naman ito. Even if you really know the answer, then that's false humility. Okay? So humility is walking in truth. You know who you are, where you stand. You're a child of God. Okay? I am a son of God. I am a daughter of God. I know where I stand. And because you also know where you stand, you should also realize that you are not greater than God. Okay? You know what's the meaning of Saint Michael, the angel, the archangel who defeated Satan in that great battle in heaven? The meaning of his name is who is like God. Because Satan, actually, that's the first sin, no? Pride. Satan was saying that he can be more powerful than God. Look at how he tempted Adam and Eve. He said, "You eat the forbidden fruit, and you will have knowledge, no, far greater than God. No? He is hiding something from you, and when you eat this, you will know exactly what he knows." Now, knowing your worth would bring you down to a realization that um I do not know everything. Somebody greater than I must have created me, and since he have created me, or she have created me, if we're going to be gender sensitive, must know what's best for me. What's best for me. But look at how we react now. We are we're very smart. We think that we know better. We think that we always know better. But one point in our life, just for example, like what's happening now in our society, we are in just 3 months. No? We are left on our knees. Given all the science, all the technology, all the money that we have, we still cannot solve this present problem that we're having. And we are reduced to our knees, begging God to save us, to save us. So know your worth, know where you stand. That's true humility. And by knowing that, then you begin to also know the worth of other people. If we are the same, if we are the same, why would I treat other people lesser or more than I treat myself? So know yourself, know your worth. Second is to live in solidarity with creation and with one another as covenantal partners. We live in solidarity with others. Um, it's not just because you're not being affected, so you will be quiet. Let me give you an example. I just forgot who said this, but he was talking about the Jewish Holocaust. He was referring to Hitler and his men, his government. He said, when they attacked the socialist, I was quiet because I was not a socialist. When they attacked uh, the Jews, I was quiet because I am not a Jew. When they started attacking homosexuals, I was quiet because I'm not a homosexual. And then when they attacked me, nobody, nobody was reacting because all of them has already been eliminated. So we should live in solidarity with others and not just with other people, but also with creation. Remember from the beginning, God has made man, humanity, as caretakers, okay, of creation. No, we are, what do you call that? He he gave us a mandate to subdue creation, to take care of it. So we need to live in solidarity, not just with our fellow human beings, but with creation as well. Called to be social and to be responsible for one another. We are responsible for one another. Remember when Cain killed his brother, what was the question of God? No? We all know that God is all knowing. But when he confronted Cain, he did not immediately tell him or told him, "Why did you kill your brother?" He asked him, "Where is your brother? Where is your brother?" And what was the answer of Cain? "Am I my brother's keeper?" Yes, we are. We are keepers of one another. Now, sin violates solidarity. Um, how do we violate solidarity? How does sin violate solidarity? These are attitudes, actions that promote indifference. The, alam mo, ang kaibahan ng the opposite of love is not hate, no? But indifference. Because when you hate somebody, you still have feelings to that person. Maybe you're just hurt or nagtatampo ka lang, but you still care for that. Uh, that relationship, yung nasirang relasyon yung dalawa, precisely is the reason why why you hate that person. There is still a connection somehow. No, you've been hurt. That's why you hate. So there is still a connection. So the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. What's indifference? Wala kang pakialam. You simply don't care. No, no feelings. No feelings. For example, you broke up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, and then you see him happy with his new girlfriend or new boyfriend. If you are still feeling something, if you're still jealous, then it only means that you still have feelings for him or for her. But if you're already indifferent, if you do not care anymore, then you're really free from that love, that relationship. So the opposite of love is indifference. So indifference is a sin. Not having any care for other people, jealousy, envy, contempt, domination, prejudice, and passiveness. These are sins that violate solidarity. To betray social commitment demanded by justice is to betray God's love and to perpetuate social sin. If you're going to betray social commitment, you are perpetuating social sin. What are our social commitments? No? Taking care of one another. I let me share this to you. I just posted this an hour ago in my Facebook page because I keep on seeing people posting, well, at least perhaps we can be thankful for this coronavirus because now we can see the value of spending more time with the family, living a simpler life, that we can survive, etc., etc. Being stuck in the home in 1 month, the environment is free from pollution, etc., etc. Looking at the brighter side. Well, that's good. But on the other hand, I cannot accept in my heart to say that this coronavirus somehow did something good for us. Maybe not for now. Why? Because a lot of people outside their homes are suffering. Perhaps you and I, living in the comforts of our homes now, because we have money, we were able to buy food that can last for a month. We have internet, we have, your only problem is because of your slow internet connection, you're having problem with our online classes. These are minor problems that you can really, these are bearable problems. But try to imagine those people outside who doesn't have a home. Our government now is saying that they are distributing kits to test for COVID-19, that they have priorities for those who are symptomatic, meaning they're already, uh, symptoms are already being seen. But for those asymptomatic, those that have symptoms, cannot avail for now for test kits. Can you imagine so many poor people exposed outside, not having this access, and they just die? Perhaps now we just don't know. We haven't heard in the news people dying in the streets because of coronavirus, but who knows? Maybe soon. So that's part of uh, social commitment. Social commitment. How concerned are you for those people who doesn't have the luxury that you're experiencing now, that you have now? Try to reflect on that. The third is to develop the virtue of fidelity as the proper characteristic of every covenantal relationship. Fidelity, oh, this is very, I think this is something that is very familiar with you. Faithfulness. Okay? Who wants to enter into a relationship that to have a relationship with somebody that is not faithful? Who does? Diba? Who? Who in his right mind would enter into a relationship who knows that the other person in that relationship is not faithful? You are crazy if you wish that. If you wish that. Fidelity requires us to be faithful as the proper characteristic of every covenantal relationship. You don't enter into a covenant, into a relationship, if you know that the other is not faithful. That is bound to disaster. It will not last. Sin violates fidelity through attitudes and actions that induces us not to trust God and others. This is what sin does to us. We become unfaithful to what we have promised to God. Okay? What did we promise in our baptism? What does our parents promise during our baptism? Okay, that's the promise of our parents. You might say, I was too young. No? I did not make that commitment. But if you are confirmed after confirmation, you're already mature. And in front of the church, you have already um, expressed your desire to follow Christ more completely. And not just that, to be a soldier of Christ, meaning to defend the faith. To defend the faith. Are you faithful with that? Are you faithful with it? We also sin by abusing something that another has entrusted to us. May pinagkatiwala sa iyo. So how faithful are you with that? Personal secrets, properties, bodies, personal welfare. Yung bodies, oh, naku, very, very, common, no? Do you trust me? Why would you not, why would you not allow me to, why don't we make love? No, if you do not trust me. Oh, that's a breach of fidelity. This sin as infidelity and as an abuse of power as well. Oh, abuse of power din siya. No? When you breach that, no? Especially, I keep on teaching you, telling you that no matter how big our sin is, God will always be faithful. Now, do you abuse that? Okay? I do not go to church anyway. My God is a loving God. He always understands. I do not know, I do not follow church teaching, but I pray naman, no? God understands me. My God is a loving God. He will always forgive. That's an abuse of relationship. That's an abusive relationship. You're taking advantage of the goodness of the other. That is not good. No, you're breaking the balance. You're breaking the authenticity of the relationship that you have. No? If you treat the other person that way, or now let's talk about God. If you treat God that way, that He is a loving God, He will just always forgive no matter what happens. Okay, that is true. That is true. But what does that makes of you? What does that makes of you? The heart. You know, Um, in ancient times, no, when there were still wars, um, I thought, which tribe was it? When they have wars, what the soldiers do or what the warriors do is when they catch the most fierce opponent, you know what they do? Pull out their hearts and they eat it. No? Kinakain nila yung puso ng kalaban nila, yung most powerful warrior na natalo nila. Why? Because they believe that the power or the center of that person lies in the heart. And they believe that when they eat that heart, the power that person has will be transferred to them. Now, let's look at that biblical image of the heart being the center of a person. Divine love is either rejected or embraced by the heart. Okay? Embraced by the heart. When we say heart, the totality of the person, not just the mind, not just the mind. Let me just share this with you. When we were crafting our mission vision in our in sorry for that, I have a companion who's coughing. Um, in our discussion in crafting our mission vision for our religious education department, it was suggested by our rector to put there to educate our students intelligently in the faith. Intelligently in the faith. Um, I said that is not complete. We should add. No? Why? I have so many intelligent students, but intelligence doesn't mean that they have embraced the faith. Actually, I have so many excellent students who can study the notes that I give, who can perfect their exams, who can debate, who can argue powerfully about what's written in the documents, the teachings of the church, but at the end of the day, they are still atheists. They still do not believe. So intelligence is not the measure. No? Intelligence is not the barometer in order to gauge acceptance or rejection of divine love. It is in the totality of the person. That's why I always keep on telling you on prioritizing on reflection papers rather than exams. You can perfect the exam, study, memorize, yes. But for you to reflect on what's happening in your life, how is God working in your life is far more important because by reflecting with what's happening in your life, then you'll have a basis whether to accept Him or reject Him. If you sit down and try to think of the things that are happening to you or that has happened to you and try to see what God is telling you, then you'll have an opportunity. Will I reject this love or will I accept it? Yun. It lies in the heart. The heart in biblical anthropology is where vital decisions are made. It is the center of feeling and reason, intention and consciousness, decision and action. It is the center, okay? The totality of the human being. Not just the mind, not just your intellectual capacity, but the whole of your being. Hmm? Diba sometimes have you felt or have you experienced sometimes that you know that it might not sound correct or logical in your mind, but your heart is telling you something else? Okay? Parang parang sinasabi ng utak ko mali, pero ang sinasabi ng puso ko ay ito ang dapat sundin. Oh, maraming ganyan, no? But, heart is not just a feeling. It's not just an organ that feels. It is the center of your humanity. I mean, of you being human. Pinagsama-sama na lahat. The heart is the locale for virtue or sin. Virtuous ka ba or sinful? The moral vision of the Bible sees good and evil not just in deeds, hindi lang sa ginagawa mo, but in the heart, which promotes good and evil actions. What's in your heart? Kaya nga may primacy of conscience. At the outside, you might be projecting good deeds. You are good, you're helpful, um, you're a philanthropist. No? You give, you donate, you help people. But only God sees what's in your heart. Why are you doing all of these things? Why are you doing all of these things? Okay? You will be examined with what's inside your heart. What's inside your heart? Okay. Seen as a religious reality. No? You cannot separate sin from a religious perspective. What is that? Seen in the context of faith. Yun, yung religious reality. Sin makes no sense apart from our awareness of our relationship with God. Now we have popular psychology. Most of you know that. Okay? Psychology is a good tool. Actually, it's being used in seminaries, no, in order for you to understand yourself. But somehow, the downside of it is this. Every actions that we do now have a corresponding reason and alibi why we do it. Diba? Like, oh, you're a bully. And then psychology would say, oh, probably he was also bullied before. That's why now he is a bully. Or now he's a sex addict because he was or she was sexually abused when she was younger. Oh, she is like this or like that because she has an absentee father, an absentee mother. We have. The truth is, we are a product of our past experiences. That is true. But the problem is, because of that, uh, we have lost eventually our sense of sin. Like everybody, everything that we do now is permissible because we are excused. We are like this because in the past we have experienced something that is bad, that that eventually made us like this. Like for example, I do not trust people. No? uh, I do not trust people because before when I trusted people, they betrayed me. So now I learned my lesson. I am not trustful anymore. Or um, I am like this. I am proud. I am mayabang because before people look down on me. So I have to, I have to look out for myself, work hard, and then prove to them that I am good. Kaya ako boastful ngayon. You cannot blame me for being mayabang because before, people are looking down. So this is what, somehow, this is the downside of psychology. We have lost the sense of sin. So you cannot separate sin from religious reality. Okay? Halimbawa, abortion, separated from its religious reality. Feminists would argue that, well, this is my body. Okay? I was raped. No? It is not my decision to have a child. No? I did not consent to have any sexual relationship because I was raped. So do I have to bear my whole life this burden of having a child? If you remove religious reality and just look at it as it is, no? As something that is anthropological, as your basic human right, your right, then it may appear not to be a sin. But in its religious context, you'll know that God did not give any human being the power to take the life of another. That power was never given to us. Never. Okay? It is only God who can give life, and it is also only Him who can take it away. Same with capital punishment. Or we will say, Hindi naman na human being yan. Monster na yan. Imagine he raped a 1-year-old. He's a drug addict. And when he was high on drugs, he raped a grandmother. He raped his grandmother. That's no longer a human being. He's already a monster. So hang him. Remove religious reality, and it will really appear that it's not sin anymore. Why? Sin makes no sense apart from our awareness of our relationship with God. Apart from God, sin will make no sense. It will just be mere actions, okay, apart from relationship with God. Sin is a violation of our covenantal relationship with God and others. Sin in the context of our covenantal relationship has a transcendent dimension and an imminent dimension. Ano yung transcendent dimension tsaka imminent dimension? Transcendent dimension means it's a break in our relationship with God. It is our no to the invitation to live with God in love. Transcendent, meaning you transcend something or someone that you cannot see, hmm, that you cannot experience now in your present reality. You need to transcend, to go beyond. Okay, so that's the transcendent dimension is of understanding of sin. It is a break of relationship with God whom we cannot see, whom we cannot feel. Immanent dimension is the no that we answer to the invitation to love and be loved by our neighbor. Immanent, something that we can feel right now. Okay? If we refuse or we say no to the love, to the invitation to love others, our brothers and sisters that we have now, or to give love to them, we say no. That is the immanent dimension of sin. Whenever a life-giving relationship is weakened or destroyed, sin in some form is present. When your relationship, our relationship with other human being is weakened, not necessarily destroyed, kahit weakened lang yan, then sin is present. Lalo na if it is destroyed. So sin is a form of selfishness. It begins in the heart and then it manifests in our actions. It always begins in the heart. Okay? It always begins in the heart. No, actions will be judged by what lies in your heart. We may be doing the same thing, but it could give a different meaning if we already know what lies in the heart of a person. Let me just give you an example. I am, for example, I am jogging. Okay? Jogging ako. But my purpose is for health. No, what lies in my heart is I'm doing this. I am jogging because I want to, in my heart, ang purpose ko is to be healthy. Now, another person is also jogging. Okay? Tumatakbo din siya. That's an action. Okay? Pareho kami tumatakbo. Pero ang intention ko pala is, kaya ako tumatakbo is to exercise for health. Another person is also running. So that's also an action. Pero kaya pala siya tumatakbo is dahil may ninakawan siya. No? So, tumatakas siya. So that's a different thing. What lies in your heart. Okay? The same action, but it will be judged differently based on your intention, what's in your heart. In striving to earn our self-worth apart from God's love, the heart misdirects and disorders its relationship with God and others. Sin arises out of our striving to protect the self we have made in order to guarantee we are lovable and beloved. Yun. Reading ko yun na. Sin arises out of our striving to protect the self we have made in order to guarantee we are lovable and beloved. We can only break the power of sin as selfishness and arrogance of power through an acceptance of God's unconditional love for us as the only true foundation of ourselves. Sometimes we do things Just like going back to our discussion about conscience, we do things to prove our self-worth, and we overdo things just to prove ourselves. We do crazy things because we feel that if we do not do these certain things, we will be unloved, because we've based our worth on what we do of in our accomplishments. But if you will go back to the truth that there's no amount of accomplishment can lessen or multiply the love that God has for you, then perhaps you will stop doing things that would harm yourself. Because if we overdo the things, uh, there's a tendency that when we overdo things, we trample on other people. We trample on other people. So to avoid sin, actually, the key in avoiding this breakup of our relationship with God is to accept that we are loved. You should begin with that. We should begin with that. Always tell yourself, I am loved. I am loved. You know, there was a tribe in somewhere in Africa. When somebody committed a mistake, you know what they do? They do not punish that person immediately. What they do is they invite people who knows that person, and they go into a meeting. They put that person at the middle, and those people who knows this person would remind him of how good he is. Okay? They will tell him his good characteristics to remind him. And that would help that person to go back to his senses and tell himself, yeah, I am a good person. I have these virtues. I have these values. Why would I reduce myself to this crime or to this sin that I have committed? I am better than that. I am better than that. Now look at yourself. The petty things that you do, the sins that you have committed, the sins that we have committed, and then reflect and tell yourself, I am better than this. I am better than this. Hindi totoo yung nagpapakatotoo lang ako. Because you are not like that. Kapag tinanggap mo na sa sarili mo na you are that low, then you are fooling yourself. You do not know your self-worth. You are better than that. Even Pope Benedict would say, we Catholics, we Christians are not called for mediocrity. We are called for greatness. When we suffer, when we experience suffering and hardships in life, that is not a trial coming from God, but actually it is something that we overcome because we are called not just for simplicity, but we are called for greatness because we follow Christ. We follow Christ. No? Do not lower your standards. Do not lower your standards. Sin and the sacrament of reconciliation. The sacrament of reconciliation becomes the concrete sign of God's love, that God's love is offered to us, and that it cannot be defeated by sin. It is a sign because it is a sacrament. It is a symbol for us that no amount of sin is far greater than God's love for you. Kahit ano pa yan, God's love is great. You can be forgiven. You will be healed. And the sacrament of reconciliation is not just a dispensation of punishment. No? Unlike before, that's how we look at the sacrament of reconciliation is. You did 5 sins, okay. Your penance or your punishment is also 5 prayers. No, that's not how the sacrament of reconciliation works. What the priest does is to advise you on how you can get out of that situation and restore the relationship that has been severed or broken or hurt. That is the idea of reconciliation. Pag-ayusin kung ano ang nasira. If you keep on doing the same things all over again, confessing the same sins all over again, then the priest, if your confessor is, kung palagi kang dun sa paring yung nagkukumpisal, then he will see a pattern. And perhaps he can give you an advice how to get out of that situation. That is the idea of reconciliation. So the relationship be restored. I will just make this very quick because you have taken this up during your elementary or high school days. First is the original sin. What is original sin? It exists before we were uh, we had this from our first parents, from, well, biblically from Adam and Eve, but from our first parents. No, when they disobeyed God, somehow humanity has this sin, and this can be erased by baptism. But concupiscence remain. What is concupiscence? That is our strong inclination to sin. It's still, we cannot deny its existence. Okay, yung strong inclination for us to choose to sin. Okay, you can feel that as well. I know our whole being and environment are infected by this condition of evil and brokenness. You are born into a situation of sin. Our environment. Example, not to be prejudiced naman with our brothers and sisters living in squatters area or our informal settlers. Most of the time, this is not naman not to be too naive with the situation. We know that realistically, many many poor people are forced to live a life somehow. How can I say this without being prejudiced to them? Diba, the language that they used to say curse words. Ang mga magnanakaw nandyan, tabi-tabi ang mga bahay, sexual immorality is rampant. When you are born in that situation, most likely you will be influenced by your environment. If you are born in a family who doesn't go to church, most likely you will grow up not going to church. Diba? If you grow up in a family of prostitutes, no? Most likely, okay, not all, but most likely, if you are born in that environment, that will be normal for you. So, in general, humanity, all of us, somehow are born in a situation or in an environment of sin. Okay? And that's how baptism would take us out of that situation. That's why your parents and your godparents would give a promise to the church that they will take care of you and they will raise you as good Christians. They need to promise that they will shield you from this sinful environment, take you out of that, because now you're a child of God. But sadly, reality would tell us that we are not, our godparents and some parents are not good in doing their job in what they have promised. So God's redemptive love enables us to resist the negative pull of original sin. Yun yung cause kasi ng original sin, yung concupiscence nga din. There's a strong inclination for us. Diba yung kanta nga na gusto kong bumait pero di ko magawa? You know, like Saint Augustine famously would say, Lord, make me chaste, but not now. Diba? Ah, ganun yun eh. The gift of love is mediated through our human community. Community natin ang magbabago sa atin. Baptism initiates us into a life-giving and supportive community. So that's original sin. Now, there are also now what we call personal sins. These are sins that we commit ourselves. Original sin is namana natin eh. Now, mortal sins naman is the one that we willingly do, consciously do, freely do. Pinili natin talagang magkasala. There are three conditions for it to be considered mortal sins. One, there should be sufficient reflection. Ano yun? When evaluative knowledge on the part of the person who committed the sin, the person understands the meaning and consequences. Simple lang yan. Sufficient reflection is you know that it is wrong, you know the consequences, you know that it would inflict harm on others or yourself, and still you committed it. You have full knowledge na masama siyang gawin, that it will harm your relationship with God and with others. But still, you did it. That's sufficient reflection. Full consent of the will. It means freedom of self-determination is present in being exercised in a particular choice of action, meaning you gave your full consent, your free will. Let me give an example. Abortion. Oh, you are just forced by your father, or you are just forced by your partner, and you did not give your full consent, and yet the deed was done. Your culpability of the sin will be lessened because you did not give your full consent, your full will. Okay? Then it's a serious matter. It should be a serious matter. It involves the gravity of the object harm that the action causes and how deeply invested is the person in the action. Dapat serious matter naman. For example, um, um, di ba syempre iba-iba naman yung scene. Halimbawa, hindi mo na naubos yung kinain mo. O sin yun kasi nag-aksaya ka. No? You wasted food. No? Before it arrived at your table, it was harvested by farmers. Many have sacrificed for that. And then here you are, you're just wasting your food. Compare that when you kill the farmer. There are some serious sins and lesser sins. So mortal sins are more serious in matter. Oh. Less serious sins are called venial sins. They're called sin analogously. Sounds it wounds our relationship with God, others, and the world, but does not radically break this relationship. Somehow, may mali tayong ginawa, but it doesn't mean that naputol na yung ating relasyon sa Panginoon. These are minor things, no? Acting inconsistently with our basic commitment to life and love. No? If practiced often, though, and it becomes ingrained in your personality, and it becomes your character, then at some point, it may have an effect of a mortal sin. Halimbawa, you failed to go to Mass. Okay? Sige, isa lang. Sabihin natin, isa. Dahil tinamad ka. Okay. Perhaps it's not yet a mortal sin. But if it becomes habitual, no, talagang kinasanayan mo na talagang hindi na ako magsisimba, hindi na ako magdadasal, then it's already severed your relationship not only with God but also the people, the church, and it becomes your character. No, kinasanayan mo na, inugali mo na, then it will have an effect of a mortal sin already. You're breaking the relationship. So, serious sins, these are venial sins turning into mortal sins and sins which can cause concern for the person. Mabigat. What is fundamental? What are the aspects of fundamental? One's fundamental option refers to one's basic life orientation. Ano ba yung orientation is, ano yung pagkakaunawa mo or where are you heading? Oriented towards growing in one's loving relationship with God or oriented towards false idols created by the self? Simply put, fundamental option means kalimutan muna natin whatever the actions you are doing. But uh, where is your mindset? Where are you heading? Right? Doon ka muna sa option, halimbawa sa pag-aasawa. Kung ang iniisip mo sa taong ito ay no matter what happens, I will love this person. You will keep on doing things that would move towards that. That would move towards that. So you have to be consistent. But if your fundamental option is not really oriented towards that person, and then that would mean that the minor actions that you will do will be oriented not moving towards that person. Diba? Halimbawa, forced marriage, pinwersa lang naman akong pakasalan yan eh. What is your fundamental option? If it doesn't comes from true love, and then expect that the following actions that you're going to do is not oriented towards that. Yung mga simpleng maliliit na bagay na pagdadaanan nyo araw-araw will not be oriented towards building or protecting the love that you have. If that is not your fundamental option. Inconsistent, gradually or significantly going away from the main object of the fundamental option. You'll be inconsistent. Yung insights that we can get from fundamental option. It helps us to see more clearly the relation aspects of the states of grace and sin. Ano yun? Ang fundamental option natin is our relationship with God, not to be broken. But if that is not our fundamental option, if that is not the thing that we have, we will look at sin and grace in a different light. Bawa, magkukumpisal ka lang para mabura yung ang naakala mong kasalanan. Pero kung ang fundamental option mo is yung dahil ayaw mong masaktan ang Diyos at ayaw mong masira yung relationship with Him, then you will look at it in a different light. No? I do not want to commit this sin because I do not want to sever or to break my relationship with God. Not because that I will be punished. Hindi dahil sa, naku, ayoko masunog ang kaluluwa ko sa impyerno. Ayoko ng karma. Would always say, karma is digital. I will not do harm to others because I am afraid that it will come back to me. Now, if that is your fundamental option, then there's something wrong with you. That is not the Christian way. The Christian way, we do not believe in karma. Sorry to say. But our orientation is always towards the relationship with God. I will not do this because I do not want to break my relationship with God, or I do not want that my relationship with God will be affected. Just imagine your relationship with your friend or with your girlfriend and boyfriend. O sige, kahit ordinary friend lang. If your orientation is your relationship with that friend, if that is your fundamental option, yung mga maliliit na bagay na ginagawa mo would help you. I mean, the things that you will do, even the small things, would be oriented towards making that relationship stronger. Hindi ka gagawa ng mga bagay that would break that relationship. That same goes with your relationship with God, our relationship with God. Do we keep on doing things of sinning? Then eventually, you're going to break that relationship if you keep on doing it. Huwag na yung analogy, you just read that. So, conclusion. Did X commit a sin? Kunyari, pakilala natin yung X. Sabihin natin Jules. So, did Jules commit a sin in our moral decision? Well, the answer will also be, it depends. It can be objectively wrong, but we cannot say it is a sin. Yet, until we consider the degree of involvement of the person in the action. Sabihin nun, yung action lang na ginawa niya, we cannot judge immediately because we need to see what lies in the heart. Okay? What is his degree of involvement in that action? When the church calls the act mortal sin, there's a presumption that the act was committed with sufficient freedom and knowledge. Pag sinabi ng simbahan na mortal sin yung ginawa mo, there's already a presumption na you have free will, full freedom. No? Malayang-malaya ka nung ginawa mo yun. Pangalawa is, you have full knowledge that what you're committing or doing is a sinful act. It does not mean that every situation where the act is committed is a situation of mortal sin. It doesn't always follow. We need to know the conscience, the intention, full knowledge and full will. So, we should not be jumping into conclusions. No? Hindi tayo pwedeng manghusga agad ng because we have to determine what's in the heart, what lies in the heart. Social sins, okay, social sins are sins of creation. Sa society. So that ends our lesson 7 about sin. I hope you learned a thing or two so that in all things God may be glorified. Thank you.